What's going on, everybody? Jason here, bringing you a video. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. 10 tips for fish keeping. This is mainly for beginners. If you've been keeping fish for a few years, you probably don't need to watch this. But if you're just starting out, if you have not even set up a tank, or you've had a tank set up for a couple months, you're having some problems, watch this video. Now, a disclaimer, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this video is going to be mainly for people who shop at your box stores, your PetSmart, your Petco, things like that. You're picking up community fish, maybe some cichlids, whatnot. You're going to PetSmart, Petco. I think a lot of us do that. I do that. So this video is going to be mainly geared for that, just to make this easier. And this video is going to have nothing to do with keeping live plants. Now, if you're a beginner, I would highly suggest don't mess with live plants and don't start with salt water. We're talking fresh water here. It'll just save you a lot of headaches down the road if you want to get into live plants and salt water. I would highly recommend doing fresh water for a while first and then move your way up. So this video is going to be mainly for you just starting off fresh water. No live plants, no salt water, nothing like that. Before we get to the first tip, just a quick thing to explain. If you're going to get into fish keeping, it can be expensive to set up. After you have everything set up, it doesn't cost much, but right off the bat, it's going to cost some money. And no matter what anybody tells you, bear in mind before you even start setting up this tank, aquariums can be noisy. I don't care where you put it. I don't care what filters you have. You're always going to probably hear your aquarium, no matter what kind of filter you have on it. You might hear a slight hum or a rattle or this and that. Just keep in mind before you even think about bringing a tank in your house, it can make noise. And if that's going to bug you, you may not want to do it. Also, another tip is to make sure your floor can handle the weight of an aquarium that you're going to put in there. When I lived in Arizona, almost every house in Arizona has a concrete foundation. You can put almost any tank you want in a house in Arizona. In Oregon, and now I lived in Oregon. Now here in Idaho, they kind of have a cement foundation, but they have a wood floor. So you got to be careful how much weight you put on your floor. The house I'm in now actually went underneath and braced my floor with some 2x4s and cement pavers to help hold up the weight of my 75-gallon tank. I'm pretty sure the floor would have held it anyway, but just to be on the safe side, the last thing you want is a 75-gallon or bigger tank crashing through your floor. Not something you want to come home to after work. So just bear that in mind. It's a very, very expensive responsibility, a piece of furniture that you're bringing into your house. It's holding a lot of water, it's very heavy, and it can be noisy. So bear that in mind. Okay, I tried to make these tips in kind of the best order from beginning of buying a tank to setting it up and cycling everything. So tip number 1, research. And you've probably, if you watch other videos, you've probably heard a lot of people say this, and it is true and it is important. The first thing you want to do is research. Go to your local fish stores, your PetSmart, your Petco. What fish do you want? Now, PetSmart and Petco, we all know what they got community fish and they got cichlids. They also have some goldfish and koi. Stay away from the koi. They can get 2 feet long. Even those little goldfish, they can get a foot long. They turn into carp, basically. A lot of people buy this tiny little goldfish, and then in a year, they're like, how did this thing get 8 to 10 inches long? I don't know if goldfish grow that fast, but... So if you're a beginner, I would either stick with your standard community fish. You got your guppies, you got your platies, your mollies, things like that, and then you got your cichlids. If you're starting off, stay away from American cichlids. They get huge. You're gonna need like at least 100-gallon tank, and unless you want to start that big, stay away from American cichlids. You could probably get away with a convict or something like that, but don't buy an Oscar, don't buy red devils, things like that. You could do an African cichlid tank, get some mbunas. Even mbunas can get pretty big, up to 6 inches, but you could definitely put those in a 75-gallon tank. So basically what I'm getting at is find out what fish you want first, then go for the size of tank. If you want community fish, you can kind of get whatever size you want. Honestly, I would not go lower than a 20-gallon tank. Man, they sell 3-gallon tanks and 5-gallon tanks. And honestly, in my personal opinion, the only thing you're going to want to put in there is one beta. You can get like a 5-10-gallon tank and throw some guppies. More than likely, they're going to die. It's too small. They're stressed. All these community fish at PetSmart, Petco, they're schooling fish. You want to get like 10 or 20 each. So I would highly recommend your first tank at least a 20-gallon, if not bigger. Honestly, I would start off if you're a beginner, you're just starting off. The bigger the better, honestly. I would recommend a 55-gallon tank. Most PetSmarts, as far as I know, you can get your standard top fin 55-gallon kit for about $150. Sometimes they have them on sale, and they're about $100. And I've had that exact one before. They're really good tanks. It comes with a tank, the lids, the light, heater, and one filter. It's a very good starter kit. It's very cheap, and it's big. You can practically throw whatever you want in there. I highly recommend, if you're new, the bigger the better, get a 55-gallon. I mean, you can get a 20-gallon kit, and you're probably going to pay 70 or 80. So you might as well wait till the 55 goes on sale and get it for 100. And you can throw all kinds of fish in there. So first, research on what fish you want. Then research the size of the tank, and obviously you're going to want to know where you're going to put it in the house. A lot of these tanks you buy at the store, you will have to buy a stand for it, or you can make a 2x4 stand. But again, find out what fish do you want. If you just want a bunch of community fish, 20-gallon or larger. If you want cichlids, I would highly recommend bare minimum 75-gallon tank. As you guys know, you watch my videos, I have a 75-gallon. I got all those peacocks and a couple of Mbuna in there, and they're doing great. You can get away with cichlids in a 75. I would not go smaller than a 75 for cichlids. But for community fish, 20-gallon and up. Also keep in mind when you buy these kits, most of them will come with your tank, your hood, your lights, your filter, and a heater. They do not come with decorations. You're going to have to buy that extra. Also keep in mind, just a quick tip, fish do not need light. I'll try to get into algae a little bit later. A lot of people have problems with algae. Algae is completely normal. It's going to happen. Do not freak out. You will grow algae. The best way to combat algae is just to clean it off the glass with your sponge. A regular kitchen dish sponge. Don't use the core side, use the sponge side. Wipe your glass. But your decorations are going to get algae on it. Just remember, you can keep the light off on your tank as long as you want. Fish don't need light. Don't put your tank next to a window or the sun's going to directly hit it. You want to keep your tank as far away from ambient light as much as possible, and your natural light, your sunlight. So fish, remember, don't need light. The light's for you, so you can see the fish. And the one thing that will combat your algae, especially, I work 5 days a week, so does my wife. When I'm at work, I keep the tank light off. The only time my light is on my tank is when I come home, and I turn it on. It's on for about 6 hours, and that's it. And I do get algae on my fake plants. I also do 2 water changes a week because I have a whole bunch of, to keep my ammonia, mainly to keep the nitrates down. But the more water changes you do, the more you're taking out those diatoms of algae floating around your water, and you combat it better. Okay, I'm throwing up this filter here just as an example, because number 2, you're going to get your tank, you're going to come home, you're going to fill it up with water. Maybe I should have brought in the chemical. This is number 2, though. I think this is really important, is oxygenating your tank. I think this is something that is really overlooked. People don't really think about this. They worry about setting up a tank, getting their fish in there, and they don't really think about how to oxygenate your tank, because most of the time it automatically does it. But how does it do that? The best way to oxygenate your tank is with a hang-on-the-back filter, such as this one, where your filter is hanging on the back, the water comes through, splashes into the tank, and it really agitates the surface of the water. That's what puts oxygen in your tank. Most people think that they're going to throw a bubbler. You know, you get your air pump and you put the air stone in there and you got bubbles coming up. And they're like, for some reason, I see this everywhere. The people that I need this to put oxygen. That doesn't put oxygen in the water. It might a little bit. Having bubbles in the water doesn't necessarily put oxygen. What puts oxygen is the water splashing. It's also a tip, if your power ever goes out for like an entire day in your home, you can literally just take jugs of water and splash your water around to keep the water circulating so your fish have oxygen. Just having a bubbler doesn't really do much. And I see this all the time where people in groups are like, why is my fish suffocating? All their fish are at the surface of the water. They're like, I have an air pump. That doesn't really do a whole lot. Now, the other thing that can cause a lot of surface agitation, if you have a small tank and a sponge filter, the sponge filter, the bubbles come flying up and it does agitate the surface. The sponge filter will also do the same thing. An air stone doesn't. The other issue I see a lot of people have is they'll buy just a canister filter, and the return pipe they put under the surface of the water. So it is filtering the water, but the surface of their water is completely still, even though the return pipe is underneath and put water back in the tank. Now, you may be filtering your water, your fish are getting no oxygen. So there's many different ways you can cause surface agitation. You can put in a wave maker like they use for saltwater tanks. You can use this HOB. You can use a sponge filter if you want to go that way. But you need to have surface agitation. And an air pump and an air stone is not enough. I don't know how many times I see this. It kind of aggravates me sometimes. I'm not trying to be a Mr. Know-It-All, but when you set up a tank, you do not need bubbles in your tank. They don't do anything for your tank other than they kind of look cool. Some people think they look cool. I think they look cool. Sometimes I'll put it in. Just remember, if you have an air pump, it's just for cosmetics. Air bubbles in your tank, it doesn't do anything. You don't need it. Okay, tip number 3 is not really necessarily tip, just kind of education here. You set up your tank. Oh, what decor do I put in my tank? What do I put in? Sand, gravel? If you're buying PetSmart and PetSmart Petco fish, it doesn't matter what you put in there. You can put sand, put gravel, you can buy the decorations in there. You can put whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. These fish don't know. They don't care. The only thing that I would suggest, if you have African cichlids like Mbuna, even peacocks, or Cory catfish, certain fish like to dig in the sand. Technically, you don't have to give them the sand, but I would recommend it. That's why I would do research on your fish and the substrate. You technically can get away with anything. Sand, gravel, doesn't matter. But if you really want to make your fish happy and at home, I would almost just use sand anytime, and you'll pretty much be on the safe side that way. If you're using community fish, it really doesn't matter unless you've got like Cory catfish. Cory, like the sand, big gravel can mess up their little bristles, whatever you call them, their antenna. If you have cichlids, I would always suggest using sand, especially African cichlids, sand and rocks. But a lot of people just, what decor do I use? You can put whatever you want in there. It doesn't matter as long as it doesn't have sharp edges. Don't dig up plants in your backyard and put it in there. And I would never, ever, ever use any sand from outside in your yard. I use rocks, but I clean those really good with a scrubby. But I definitely would not dig up dirt or small gravel or sand in your backyard and use that. That could have all kinds of parasites and things in it. Any gravel or sand, I would highly recommend you buy that from a fish store. But as far as what to put in, I mean, honestly, it's not really a big deal. As long as you give the fish hiding places, you can put in fake wood, fake plants, sand, gravel, doesn't matter. Okay, number 4, probably the most important part, one of the most important part, is cycling your tank. And this is lots of controversy. I will tell you right off the bat, I have never once ever done a fishless cycle, and I've never had a fish die from it. So many people will freaking get pissed off and start raving mad. That is so mean and inhumane to do a fish in cycle, which means you set up your tank and you throw your fish in. It can be. It depends on how you do it. First, if you're going to keep community fish, you get a 20-gallon tank and throw in a few guppies, you can do that right away. And I'm going to show you the chemicals to use. What you don't want to do is set up a 20-gallon tank and throw an Oscar in there. I'll go through a quick rundown of the nitrogen cycle and how it works, and then you'll kind of understand. And here's what happens. Any type of waste in your tank, this is why we have a filter on our tank. Any waste will turn into ammonia in your tank. Every time the fish pees, it poops, any food in there that does not get eaten, anything that rots, decays, is going to turn to ammonia. This is what kills your fish. Okay, this is why we put a filter. Now, what the filter is doing is channeling all the water through one area, and it's going through a bunch of media, whether it's a cartridge or you have biomedia, lava rock, things like that. I've done plenty of videos on how to set up a filter. Your filter is going to grow bacteria all over it. This bacteria is going to eat the ammonia, convert it to nitrates, and it basically kills all that, and that's how your fish stay healthy. That's basically your cycle. Now, the reason people say don't do a cycle with a fish in there is because you can have an overload of ammonia and that'll kill your fish because your filter technically doesn't have any bacteria built up. This is why I use API Quick Start, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the thing is that a few guppies in a 20-gallon aquarium is not going to do an overload of ammonia. It's just not going to happen. You can also do water changes every couple days to stay on top of that ammonia if it is building up. But cycling a tank with fish in it, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not overstocking it. My 75-gallon right now, you guys, my last video, if I set up that 75-gallon and put all those fish in there, they would die within a week. There's way too many fish. They would produce so much poop and ammonia. There's no way that any of those filters would grow enough bacteria fast enough to eat that ammonia. So it depends on the case. If you really are worried about your fish, you don't have to do that. I would highly recommend just dump some fish food in your tank. Set up your tank, throw in some fish food. It's going to decay, create ammonia, and that'll get your filter going. If you want to be on the safe side and not have to worry about killing fish, throw in some fish food. A lot of people use all kinds of different chemicals. You can literally just go buy straight ammonia at the store and dump that in, or just dump some fish food. Anyway, it's a really controversial topic, is cycling your tank. And I don't really think it's nowhere as complicated as people make it. I just did the quick rundown. What you want to do is have your filter grow bacteria, and that will eat the ammonia in your tank, and that's what keeps your tank healthy. The ammonia and the nitrites is what kills your fish. So you need a source of ammonia, and then you also need a source of starter bacteria, and that will help cycle your tank. And if you just have a couple of fish, it's not going to hurt them, especially if you get a test kit. You can test your water, stay on top of your parameters, you'll be fine. If you guys are going to cycle your tank with a few fish, I would recommend doing it like this. If you're going to buy a kit, you got your Decor. You come home, you set up your tank, you put your Decor in it, you throw in some water and start running it. Don't put the fish in until the next day. Let that at least cycle. Add your water conditioner, your beneficial bacteria. Let all of that just kind of, circulate for a day. And then you can go throw a couple of fish in the next day. But I would not recommend coming home, setting them up, and throwing the fish in like in the same 5 minutes. That I would not recommend. Personally, I would at least wait a day before you put in a few fish. Let the water circulate. Okay, I'm trying to do these in order. This would be number 5. Chemicals you need. And kind of starting up. This is what I personally use. I'm going to show you all these chemicals. This is all what I use. I use API. And it's not because API pays me or sponsors me or anything. I just think their products work. A lot of people will use Prime or Seachem. That is good also. There's many other chemicals you can research and use. But I use API. I just always have. This is the quick start. So when you first set up your tank, this is what you're going to want to throw in. And read the instructions to learn how much to put in relevance to the amount of gallons of your tank. So this is your quick start. Allows instant addition of fish. This is going to detoxify ammonia nitrites, and it contains live bacteria that will help cycle your filter faster. So I highly recommend using this. When you first set up your tank, you're going to want to throw this in. Okay, also, API stress coat. Sorry if that picture is a little grainy or blurry. This is your water conditioner. So the first one was basically adding your beneficial bacteria to jumpstart the cycle. This is your water conditioner, more to make your water safe. This removes chlorine, chloramines, and things like this. Makes your water safe. Also has aloe. That's why I like this. This helps the slime coat of your fish. These are the two main things, in my opinion, that you're really only ever going to need on your tank. Some people go crazy with these chemicals. All you need is some type of water conditioner or your beneficial bacteria. The other thing that you need to get is a test kit. I recommend the API Freshwater Master Test Kit. I have this myself. I use it. It's pretty accurate. You need to have this when you're setting up a tank. I don't know how many. I'm in a few fish groups. Obviously, you guys know that. I'm in my own group. I don't know how many people that like, I'm having these problems. Test your water first, and it gets really aggravating. People are constantly like, my fish is sick. What do I do? I don't know. Test your water, test your ammonia, test your nitrates, test your nitrites, test your pH, test your what's your temperature, blah blah blah. Like freaking everything. Like you can't just say like, why is this happening? And again, that's why I'm making this video. Get yourself a test kit. When you first set up the tank, test that water every day and see where you're at. This one, all these you guys can get on Amazon and at PetSmart. So the only other chemical that I use, which is not even really a chemical, is API Aquarium salt. The only time I ever use this is for medicating. After all my years of keeping fish, I will not medicate my fish anymore, and I'll go into that later. One of my peacock cichlids had Popeye months ago, and all I did was add salt, and his eye got better within a few days. Salt is aquarium salt's pretty good for your fish. It depends on the fish. You do not want to use this on fish that don't have scales. You also don't want to use aquarium salt if you have plants, which we're not talking about plants in this video. Just fish. So I believe aquarium salt works in some cases. Do some research on that. You can also get this at PetSmart, and I think you can get it on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. Me personally, I only put half the recommended dose into my tank if I ever use it. And in my opinion, the best way to use this is if you got a blender, put about a cup of hot water, add the amount that you want into that blender and blend it up, and it'll just, because this stuff is very coarse salt. You can't just dump it into the tank. You can burn your fish. So I always put the salt in a blender with hot water and blend it up until it's completely dissolved, and then just trickle it into the tank slowly. But I don't use this very often. I only use it if I see the fish might look a little bit unhealthy, if maybe they have some scale issues, Popeye, things like that. Okay, number 6, what do I feed my fish? If you're shopping at PetSmart or Petco, I only use 3 different types of food. Actually, the other 2 I don't get there, but I think you can. But this one, Omega-1 Super Color Flakes. You can pretty much, guys, you got to understand, these fish at PetSmart, Petco, these are massively bred fish. They can pretty much eat anything. If you're buying from like online or a specific local fish store, maybe they have different suppliers and these fish are used to eating certain foods. That's a different story. At PetSmart, most of those fish, they feed them pellets and flakes. That's really all you need. This is what I feed my peacocks, Super Color Flakes. I also feed them Hikari sinking cichlid pellets. These are the mini. That's actually the nice thing about these is they have different size pellets, and they have a picture right on the front that will show you the size. So this is basically more your protein type of pellet. And then I also feed them the Hikari sinking. This is your veggie pellet, same size, the mini pellets. So those 3 foods right there, I feed them flakes and pellets. That's all I feed them. And then some of my pellets, these are the vegetarian, so they kind of get the best of both worlds. This is all I feed my fish. That's it, flakes and pellets. The fish at PetSmart and Petco, they are not being fed this grand variety of food. And honestly, a lot of this is specific food made for your fish that has all the vitamins and minerals. I would stay away from that frozen food. Don't feed your fish the bloodworms. Honestly, that's total junk food. It's total crap. You can get away with it every now and then. I would stay away from the frozen foods. Okay, number 7 is tank maintenance. How often do you maintenance your tank? When do I do it? How do I do it? I think people overcomplicate this. Now, I have a 75-gallon tank. I've got a lot of peacocks in there. I have to do 2 50% water changes a week. I do one on Wednesday, and then one usually is Saturday night. Try to space it evenly. And even with those, my nitrates are always about 0.40. Because there's a lot of fish. I have 3 filters, and it's the one thing that people need to understand. Over filtering your tank is the best thing to do. You do not want to under filter it, but no matter how much you over filter it, it's almost impossible to get rid of nitrates. That's why people add live plants but we're not talking about that. Since we don't have live plants, we do water changes to get rid of the nitrates. So I have to do 2 a week with a 75-gallon and all those cichlids. And you can just buy your standard gravel vac like this, which I use. And basically all I do is just drain half the water. I will gravel vac it first to get all the gunk off the bottom. If you don't know anything about this, go research some videos on how to use gravel vac. This will be your best friend and get all that waste off the bottom, all the poop. And then I just use a kitchen sponge to wipe the glass. And that's pretty much it. And I'll drain 50% of the water. Put 50% back in. Make sure you get the temperature of the water as close as you can to the temperature of your tank. Add the appropriate water conditioner to make sure the water is safe. You don't really need to add the beneficial bacteria. You can. Doesn't hurt anything. I don't. All I do is just drain 50% of the water. I fill a bit. I put 50% back in, add the water conditioner, clean the glass, gravel vac. That's it. As far as filter maintenance, I don't ever clean my filters unless they get clogged up. Plain and simple. One thing that bugs the heck out of me is people constantly complaining they're having so many issues with their tank, and they're always cleaning the filter. Stop cleaning your filter. You don't need to clean your filter. That's actually what helps your tank. And it just, I don't know how to explain that. Every time you clean your filter, you're disposing of beneficial bacteria. There may be a lot of gunk. There may be fish food in there and poop and all of that. That's keeping your bacteria alive. So you do not need to ever clean your filters unless they're just completely gunked up. And now a canister filter, you can't see inside of it. And I'll usually clean that every 1 to 2 months. There's just a large amount of volume of water in those things. They don't really get clogged up. They get dirty, but they don't really get clogged up. My HOBs on the back, I don't clean them until that water starts overflowing, plain and simple. And even when it comes to cleaning, do not go overboard. Just clean a little bit to where they don't overflow. You do not want to get rid of all that bacteria. Okay, number 8, this kind of coincides with the last tip, filter maintenance. We're going to talk specifically about filter maintenance, and it'll be real quick because I kind of already did. Sorry about the horrible picture on this canister filter. These are the 3 main popular filters. You got canister, you got your hang on the back, and you got a sponge filter. If you're using a sponge filter, the best way to clean these is fill up a cooler or a bucket full of tank water. Take your sponge out, squeeze it out in that bucket. Try not to ever squeeze a sponge filter out with tap water. That can kill the bacteria. It kind of depends on where you live and the quality of the water in your home state, city, wherever you're living. So I've seen people have sponge filters in their tanks that are just, they've never cleaned them and they're completely covered in algae. I guess they're still technically working. You don't really need to clean these, again, unless they're completely clogged up. But if you do clean it, just squeeze it out in tank water. Now, this is kind of the same thing with your hang on the back filters. I have 2 of these, but they're the new ones. These are the old ones. I have 2 of the new ones where they have the submersible pump that goes into the water, so you don't have to prime it. But same thing. My wheels are still turning. If they ever stop, they start growing a bunch of algae and all this crap, I just take it to the sink. I'll just rinse off the algae real quick, put it right back on. The cartridges I'll take to the sink. I'll just rinse off just a fair amount to where it's not overflowing anymore. Now, because I do have sand in the tank, my cichlids like to spit sand everywhere. Sometimes I get a lot of sand getting sucked up there. I'll just I'll take the motor off, rinse it out. You don't want to go overboard on cleaning, okay? You don't want to you don't want to kill all your bacteria. You just want to, just a quick little cleaning. A lot of people, they have this misconception that, oh my gosh, my filter's dirty. Yeah, that's okay. It's supposed to be. You don't want to clean it spick and span. That's the worst thing you can do. The other thing is your canister filter. Sorry about most canister filters, as far as I know, even the one I have, I think I got that Penplex. It's transparent. You still can't see how dirty it is. So I just clean it once a month. And cleaning a canister filter can be a pain in the butt. The one thing, what I do, I have a whole tray full of filter floss. I will toss it, put in fresh filter floss. And that's okay. Getting rid of all that bacteria is okay because I have 2 other filters and I have 2 trays in this canister that's filled with BioHome filter media. And those trays, I just kind of dunk into a cooler filled with tank water, just kind of swish them around to get all the gunk off, and that's it. That's really simple, guys. Cleaning your filter, do not go overboard on it. It's I don't know. There's this misconception that if my filter's dirty, then my water's no. If your filter's like, if it looks dirty, that's good. It's cleaning. And if you want to know if your filter is working right, the best way to tell if your filter is working correctly is to test your water. Okay, just a quick talk about medication. This is number 9, medicating sick fish. Plain and simple, guys, I don't do it. This is another controversial subject. In all my years of fish keeping, I have found that medicating fish is almost pointless. Now, this really depends on the fish. How many fish do you have? Is it one? If you have like 100-gallon tank and you got a couple of massive Oscars, then it probably would be worth it to help those 2 fish. If you got a 55-gallon tank just loaded with community fish, medicating the tank could hurt other fish. It's a very technical subject. There's a lot involved. The only thing I ever medicate my fish with is salt. When I had my flowerhorn Ragnar, he cut his head open, and I tried medicating. I was spending $8 a day to treat that 100-gallon tank that I had set up. It didn't do anything. He died, and maybe I just got to him too late. But the thing is that you're going to have to ask yourself, is it worth buying this expensive medication to save a guppy or a platy or a molly? Is it worth it? Now, I know people become attached to their fish. That's something that you guys are going to have to ask yourself. Is it worth trying to save this fish? Is it worth spending the money? Because I'm going to tell you right off the bat, anytime you go, when you set up a tank and you're going to go to PetSmart or Petco and buy a bunch of community fish, I would literally expect half of them to die. It's just the reality of fish keeping. If you want a more hardy fish, then start with cichlids. I don't recommend starting with cichlids, but you can. It's not a big deal. Do some research on them. Cichlids are a lot more hardy, and I've hardly ever had one of them die just from getting ick or getting sick. Community fish, I've had them die left and right, and people get so upset and they're surprised. Why is my guppy dying? It's dying because it's a guppy. You know, these community, these overbred fish at PetSmart and Petco, they're not the strongest fish. Immune system wise, they're not the strongest fish out there. So if you're going to medicate a tank, that's up to you. I don't medicate anymore. Either my fish is going to make it or it's not. I can't afford to spend a crap load of money on medication, risk hurting other fish in the process. The one thing that I know will work for my fish is aquarium salt, and it does help. And honestly, the best way to keep your fish healthy is just to have a set routine maintenance for your tank. The water changes, the filter cleaning, all that. It really what it comes down to is consistency. If you have fish constantly getting sick, there's something wrong. So in number 9 of medicating, I'm not going to tell you guys whether you should medicate your fish. It's not really it's not a subject of whether you can tell somebody you have to do this or not. It's up to you. And I won't medicate them anymore. To me, it's not worth it. I've hardly ever had any medication work. It just doesn't work. They're either going to live or they're going to die, and it's kind of the reality of it. Okay, last on the list, number 10. Probably the most important part. I'm gonna say this is the most important part of fish keeping, and something that we all screw up is messing with your tank. Number 10, leave it alone. Leave your tank alone. It is so hard. It is so hard. Let me sum this up. You go buy a tank, you come home, you set it up, get it running, get your Decor in there, add your water conditioner, your bacteria the next day, throw just a few fish in there just to get it cycled. After a couple weeks, add some more fish, this and that. And you will slowly build up an ecosystem. And what happens after a couple weeks? Oh, I want to change this. I want to change this. I want to add this. I want to do. The more you screw with a tank, the more problems you're going to have. Leave it alone. Get your tank to where you want it to be and leave it. And if it's not enough, then buy another tank, set up another tank. And this is where things get crazy. This is where people get addicted to tanks. You're better off buying another tank to set it up differently than you are to constantly mess with the one tank you have. And I am totally guilty of this. I've done this so many flipping times. And with these peacocks, I just said screw it. This is one of the reasons why I really don't make videos anymore. I'm just letting the tank go. And it is probably the best tank I've had since Arizona. I'm just leaving it alone, letting the fish grow, letting the tank just constantly build its own ecosystem, and all the fish in there are healthy. Leave your tank alone. The only time you should be messing with your tank is if, you got if a fish gets ick. There's some type of parasite in there. Your ammonia is really high. These things are something that normally happens when you're first setting up a tank. After a few months, once it's kind of established, leave it alone. Get the amount of fish in there you want and leave it alone. Obviously, you will have to do your routine maintenance, your water changes, things like that. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying stop changing decor, stop changing substrate, stop putting different fish in, stop taking fish out, stop changing things around, don't change your filters. Don't I want to get this filter instead. Pick a filter, stay with it. Pick this, stay with it. Let it sit. Just let it be. The more you leave your tank alone, the healthier it will be. It just will. And if it's doing the opposite, then you're doing something wrong, and more than likely your tank is under-filtered. You may need to put another filter on it. But 99% of the time, most people have problems with their tanks because they just can't leave it alone. And this plays a big part into when you're setting your tank up. What happens when you first set up your tank? Your water's cloudy, okay? That's totally normal. And people freak out oh, I need to do this. What can I do? What you can do is leave it the freaking heck alone. It literally will clear up on its own. You got to let it cycle. People freak out about the white haze. The white haze, that's a biobloom. Don't touch it. Don't do anything. Leave it alone. That's good. That means your tank is cycling. If you have a green haze, that's algae. You got a problem. Get a UV sterilizer. For a green haze, get a UV sterilizer, and that will take care of that. But when you first set up a tank, nothing's going to be perfect for about a week, and that's okay. Leave it alone. Test your water, make sure your ammonia is not out of control, but leave it alone. Let your filters do their job. Okay, guys, that's the video. Those are my 10 tips, and I hope this video wasn't too long. I probably rambled on, but I'm trying to give you beginners the best knowledge I can. There's many different ways to keep a tank healthy and sustainable. There's so many other things out there. Once you start getting into live plants, you've got dirt substrates. There's all kinds of different fish. This video is mainly geared toward beginners who shop at PetSmart and Petco. A quick rundown: just set up your tank and leave it the heck alone. I can't really say more than that. I went over everything: the food, the chemicals that you need, lighting. Lighting's not a big deal. People kind of go crazy over what light do I need? It doesn't flippin' matter. Fish don't need light. The light's for you. Just be careful about the light you get. Different lights can grow a lot of algae. So unless you're keeping live plants, don't get a plant light. The reality is we keep fish for our entertainment, and things are going to go wrong. They will. I've already had a few fish get murdered in my tank. It's just the nature that I've woken up. I bought a couple new fish, and 2 days later I woke up. They were just annihilated. It sucks, but it's the reality. It's what happens. And a lot of people they're so surprised. If a fish dies, it gets ick, a disease, another fish kills it. You're going to have to be prepared for this. Expect it. Expect fish to die. It happens. I'm not saying all the time. Don't expect every day your fish is going to die. Mainly when you're setting it up. That's the worst period, is the first few weeks. Once your tank gets settled, it should be fine. But this is the reality of fish keeping. And there's no exact science to this. There's so many other videos you can watch. I encourage you guys to watch other videos on tips, not just mine, because there's many other different ways to do this. I know a lot of people are going to be hating this video because I cycle tanks with fish. And I don't care to medicate them. People are going to get pissed off about that, but you know what? If you learn how to do it right, it'll work. I don't know what else to say. If I left anything out, feel free to ask me a question in the comments section. I will try to answer as soon as I can. But that's it. That's my 10 tips. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.